All right, so I'm going to go through a sidelying hip car, and I'm going to do a couple variations of it. Both of them are going to be sidelying. There's only really one difference, and the one difference is that it's going to be with a foam roller, something like this that you can do at home. You can use at home if you choose to do it this way. There's not really a huge difference in doing this. I just use this because it gives us something to kind of grab onto that is close to what we're going to be doing in our sport of jiu-jitsu, and it's also a great way to visualize the importance of what we're doing here. So if you have a long one, you can use a long one. You can also use a short one like this, but let's dive into it real quick. Let's go through the basics, and then once we get to the modification, we'll take a look at that one too. So I'm going to go through this hip car first, and I'm going to be on my side here, and if you need to, you can create a little bit of a bend in this bottom leg just to give you a little bit of stability here, but this top leg is going to be the one that's doing the work. So what I want you to imagine is that there's a fireman's pole that is going to stick up into the ceiling and run right through this bump right here. And so your hips need to be stacked and glued to the mat as much as possible. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to trap air kind of into our gut here, and that's going to help create stability in our body so that we're not rolling out and trying to find mobility somewhere that we don't want it, or that compensates and allows us more range of motion than what we actually have. So this hip car is basically finding, it's basically using all of the hip range of motion that we have, and then applying it to our sport. So going through what it's going to look like, we're going to trap air. I'm going to kind of create tension this way, and the first thing that we're going to do is this top leg's going to come up into hip flexion, and as I start getting up here, I'm going to start externally rotating my femur. So my femur is externally rotating, and I'm going to come up into max hip flexion here. So you're going to feel like a natural point where you can't get any more without rolling backwards. Okay, so I'm going to come up, I'm going to roll out, and then boom, max hip flexion, max external rotation. I am physically driving contraction into this hip to get as much as possible. At this point where I feel like that's a natural stopping point, I'm going to internally rotate, and I'm going to start driving my hip backwards into hip extension as I drive into more hip internal rotation. So as I get more extension and as I get more, my leg is going into as much internal rotation as possible. So you see that my heel is pointed up here. Okay, so at this point, now we're going to go in reverse. I'm going to go max internal rotation. I'm going to come up into max hip extension, flexion, and I hit that natural stopping point. Now I start going into hip flexion and external rotation. And I come here and I place my foot down. That's one rep, okay? So now I'm going to use this. So I'm going to imagine I've got somebody in a rear naked choke. You can put in a rear naked choke, but I want you to squeeze this right here. I want you to imagine that this is a person. This is your opponent. And if you have a long one that'll go down here, that'll be even better. But I want you to squeeze this because it does the same kind of thing that we were doing where we're trapping air. And the idea is that we are creating stability here. We're driving force through here. We're trying to go through our finishing mechanics. All right, but at the same time, we're also looking to solidify back control. Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to squeeze. We're going to squeeze, 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 and now we're going to do our car. So we're going to come here, and I'm I'm driving force through all my body. So boom, coming up, I am
packed in here. That's my natural stopping point. Hip internal rotation, driving into extension. Not rolling backwards, driving into extension and internal rotation. Here, now this is the part where it's going to look like we're taking the back. So we're going to come up, max effort, boom, external rotation. The person's hiding their hip. A lot of times they're going to be like this, hiding their hip whenever they're trying to prevent you from taking the back. So you're coming up, external rotation, and now I'm coming through. I'm scooping the leg because I can beat them hiding the hip if I've got good rotation here. I'm going to scoop the leg, come down, and end here. So what you might see as far as a set rep scheme is you might see 5 of these front and back, and then you're done. So go to the 5, go forwards, then go in reverse. That's 1 rep. Do 5 of them each side, and then that is a controlled articular rotation from the side lying position for taking the back.